to discuss, but we're going to just touch on that a little today because there is more we can go into about traumatic brain injury that we'll bring Michelle back for at another time. However, if any of the listeners have a question for Michelle during the show, you can call us at 800-8949, and we'd be happy to take your call. So I did a little research over the weekend to kind of figure out how the brain works. And it's a really fascinating subject, and it's interesting about how adults learn differently than children, but also about the different areas of the brain that we use and different tricks or techniques. I shouldn't say tricks. They're really techniques that have been proven in studies, clinical studies, to show how we can progress personally and professionally by using different tools to improve our livelihood. So I found a study that was done at Stanford University, and most people think that when it comes to success that you're either born with brains or you're not. And we found that, they found in this study by psychologist Carol Dweck, she has spent her entire career studying the attitude and performance. And this study is going to show you that attitude is a better predictor of success than your IQ. Now, Dweck found that people's core attitudes fall into one of two categories. One is either a fixed mindset or a growth mindset. With a fixed mindset, that just basically means that you believe who you are and you cannot change that. And this creates problems when you're challenged because anything that appears to be more than you can handle is bound to make you feel hopeless and overwhelmed. And that's easy to fall into that category. However, people with a growth mindset believe that they can improve with effort. They outperform those with a fixed mindset, even when they have a lower IQ, because they embrace challenges, treating them as opportunities to learn something new. And I know I've found this to be true throughout my career, as we're constantly evolving and changing, and we want to grow, and whether we have to learn a new task or function at work, oftentimes we're taught embrace change, and as an adult you tend to want to stop, no, and I don't want any more change, whether it's getting a new phone, you got to learn all the tricks, how to operate it, or a computer. So the common sense would suggest that having an ability like being smart inspires confidence over those that don't. But that's only, it goes to an extent. I think people with higher intelligence or higher IQs have their own other struggles in life. And the deciding factor in life is how you handle those setbacks and challenges. And people with a growth mindset welcome setbacks with open arms. One quote that I like from her is, "Failure is information. We label it a failure, but it's more like this. This didn't work. I am a problem solver, so I'll try something else." So that's something I think sometimes even every day we have to get up and start over and say, okay, it's a new day. I'm going to put that behind me. That didn't work. Let's just keep going.
Yes. I really recommend everyone read that book, Mindset by Dr. Carol Dweck, because when you learn about those two mindsets, the growth and the fixed mindset, and how much you can actually accomplish, one thing that I thought was really interesting is kids who are told they are smart is kind of a no-no these days, because that's such a reaction you want to have, especially as a parent or someone who's around kids. You see them do something and you say, "You're so smart." Well, what she found in this study is that actually with those kids, they found that as soon as they weren't able to achieve whatever it was they were trying to achieve, or they weren't getting that feedback of "you're so smart," then they equated themselves with being stupid. So if they weren't, if they didn't make an A, they were stupid. When, the growth mindset is all about when you don't make an A, well, you probably need to study more next time, and you kind of have a sense of, you take that on as something you can control, and have those standards. But, neuroplasticity is really, really fun and exciting to talk about, because the brain can change at any time, at any age in life. And this is something that is an emerging science. And so with neuroplasticity specifically, the ability of the brain to change, we're finding new things every day. And specifically where we focus at our Learning at Rec Center has to do with building very specific skills. So very specific cognitive skills. These are the skills that make up attention, memory, processing speed, auditory, visual processing, logic, and reasoning. And when you target those skills, you can build and improve. It's phenomenal what you can accomplish. It's important to foster that growth mindset, but you can focus on building those skills as well.
That's interesting, because I know myself, as a child, my brother was always the smart one. He was always the high honor roll, skipped a year of high school, was accepted into any college.
And everyone knows someone like that.
Yes. And then here, and I don't know if it's just the firstborn, but here I am. I was the middle child, and it was more like, oh, I'd come home with my A's, B's, maybe C's. And my mom would go, oh, I didn't expect you to get such good grades.
Oh.
Wow, Mom. Thanks. That's so encouraging.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I tried, I was a single mom for a long time, and I tried to be encouraging to my daughter, but I know there were times when I feel bad as a parent now. I wish I could go back and change that and say, be more supportive or find out why she was struggling. And I know we're going to talk a little more about that later on, about how, what is the right thing to say to a child, or when do you know your child needs tutoring or learning, or is it just, is it a certain subject, or is it a cognitive challenge that they have that can be overcome?
Well, and like I said, everyone knows someone who did well in school, who didn't have to study, who just could, show up for class and ace the test. And it's very frustrating for everyone else who can't do that. But really, the predictor of that has a lot to do somewhat with not even necessarily with the growth mindset. You have a lot of kids even who have school is easy for them, but they still.
Let's take the call here. Good morning. You're on Nooga Radio Health Essentials. What's your name?
Great topic. Really, what is intelligence? I have to land by test. People don't have high IQ. That means you can solve puzzles. And people that do well on that means you have a good memory. But really, I can find business with a flex test. And really, what is intelligence? Who was smart and really smart, who can develop better skills in particular tasks. I happen to think everyone's given a set of skill sets to move forward to in life, and you just have to understand what they are. Maybe communications, maybe it's operating motor vehicles, and understanding mechanics of the internal combustion engine. I remember my friend who I grew up with since I was 4 had an interest in the internal combustion engine. Became a great mechanic. I had an interest in electronics and computers and went in that direction. But put a test in front of me, I'll probably fail. So I've never equated test taking with being smart and dumb.
Good.
So this is a very interesting topic. Thank you for bringing it forward and all those things.
No, thank you. We appreciate you listening.
And you're absolutely right. IQ and intelligence isn't the single predictor of success. So IQ tests, that you can take them with a grain of salt. There's so many other things that, and we do as adults, we find ways to compensate. We find what we're good at, and we avoid the things that we're bad at, and that's okay. The idea with intelligence training and with brain training is that you can actually go back at any time and find what is not easy and automatic. So, if you mentioned test taking, and test taking is terrible, why is that? Is it, does it have to do with recall? Does it have to do with anxiety? There are multiple factors that, if it's cognitive skill based, what scientists are finding with neuroplasticity is that you can change that. And you don't need to take tests anymore, but you might need to recall things still, and you mentioned earlier, and I love, talking about this factor as well, that as we become adults and we get to really do the things that we want to do, we practice those things, and we don't do new things anymore. We don't like change. We like to do the things that we're good at, and so we do those over and over, and we get great at those things, and we avoid the things we're not good at. But what happens is, when you're in school, for example, you're forced to study for tests and take tests, and you're forced to learn in a certain way that has some more successes and failures. But again, as you quit practicing your memorization, your memory begins to decline. As you quit practicing things, you begin to, because the way that the brain works is it's just like with physical exercise. If you used only your right arm and you just exercised your right arm, then your right arm would become strong and your left arm would actually become weaker, right? And the brain works in the same way. When you practice very specific skills, those skills become stronger. When you don't use those skills, they become weaker. And actually the science there shows brain mapping where actually maybe the auditory section in someone who's blind, the auditory section becomes larger and the visual section becomes smaller. So the physical brain changes, and it's just fascinating stuff.
It is, because I have heard that the brain, it compensates, kind of like if you said, if you use one arm and not the other, then you start overcompensating with that side. It's the same thing with your back, your spine. If you're wearing high heels, you're compensating your weight, and that can cause other problems. Now, with the brain, you mentioned that obviously it's constantly growing. It can morph even as an adult, and being over 40 myself, we've always been taught that, oh, well, as you age, your brain starts dying, the cells, you can only learn so much. And I guess that's not the case anymore.
That's old news. Yeah,
yes.
It's not the case anymore.
And I think you have a great case study that maybe we can get into before our first break here about a local person here, a Chattanoogan, a man in his 40s who unfortunately did struggle some through school, but it was never picked up on. He was never treated. But fortunately, he met you and he found some ways that he could improve. So why don't you tell us about Eddie?
Well, Eddie, he's brilliant. I mean, he's a total visionary. He's the president of a local company. It's amazing to talk with him and hear about, and you can really see and hear his brilliance when you talk with him. But when he has a huge list of emails, that's overwhelming. He gets distracted, or, he was getting distracted easily. Especially when you're so busy and you have someone coming in while you're in the middle of this and you have to put something down, pick something else up. You're constantly doing that. It was hard. He really relied a lot on his assistant for help with that. Being able to just recall information in meetings was, becoming a little bit more of a struggle. So he ended up, we actually just met at random sort of by chance. And he was very intrigued by that, and he's one of those innovators. He's one of those early adopters. There was a study recently where they took 3,000 decision makers and early adopters, and they found, they polled them about brain health, and they have found that brain health is one of those things that everyone sort of has on their radar now because we know about neuroplasticity and the brain changing. 83% of those 3,000 decision makers and early adopters said that they would personally take a brief assessment every year as an annual mental checkup. That's something that's important for us to do. 94% agree that addressing cognitive and brain health should be a healthcare priority. It is something we're seeing, especially in the senior population, that's really growing.
I think especially with Alzheimer's and dementia, and the fact that they're finding that in younger people now, audiences, and it's really startling. But I believe there are ways to combat that, to help slow it down, the process, or what's going to happen, even though there is a DNA.
Yes, there's degenerative brain disorders, absolutely. But a lot of cognitive skills exercise has been shown, just like physical exercise, can really, really help. When dealing with some of those symptoms that you find.
When they say that you should always be doing the brain teasers or doing a crossword puzzle every day, there's the reason behind that. It's not just to keep you busy.
Right. Oh, yeah. Use your brain. Oh, yeah. And again, in this study, 83% agree that adults of all ages should take charge of their own brain fitness without waiting for their doctor to tell them to. And this is, the state of the brain health market, essentially 2012 to 2020. So this is something that, looking into the future. But Eddie has this mindset of innovation and an early adopter. He wanted to take control of that, of his brain health. So he ended up going through a personalized, individual brain training program. We did an assessment. We found where his real weaknesses were. We could also see his strengths. We didn't work on those. But we took those weak areas and we trained the same way that a personal trainer at a gym targets, to meet your goals and really pushes you to achieve that success. He trained for it was a 4 to 5 month period. And in that time, and maybe it was 2 months in, he started really noting some major changes that he was seeing. And, this was important. And I'd love to mention some of these. I just need to find it here. But, things like how not being as distracted when there were people coming in and interrupting him, seeing his mental, seeing his mental endurance improve. So he wasn't mentally fatigued as often and as early, on in the day. When you're very busy, it can be mentally fatiguing. Some other things, being able to just recall in a meeting, recall facts, remember people's names. Really struggled just having people's names. So he wouldn't use them because he wasn't 100% sure that was the right name. But now, he's feeling more confident with that. We actually worked with him on a very specific technique that is a visualization associated with memory. And this is a sort of a trick that all memory masters use to create a visual image in your mind. And he was able to use that in his daily life and to remember personal information about his business that he needed to know. So it was really fascinating to see how he was able to utilize this training program to build his processing speed and build his memory and be able to actually become more efficient in the workplace. And who doesn't want that?
Right. I know I do. I think a lot of people, every day I hear people say, well, I'm not good at names. I say, well, don't tell yourself that. You're planting that seed. You're being negative, and you want to, be positive and say, oh, I can remember your name. Or even if I have a trick that I usually remember people's names by the first letter of their name. Yeah. I don't know why. It's like, okay, her name starts with an M. It's not Mary. It's, Michelle. Yes, that's it. Yeah. And you remember that. Or some people can do it by, visualizing.
Yes.
Because visualization is really big for men and women.
Yes.
Just whether it's the logo. I remember their company logo. I remember who you work for.
Mm-hmm. And, it's interesting because male and female brains are different, believe it or not.
Oh, yeah.
And, where women tend to be more auditory, men are definitely more visual in their learning. And so the visualization really works well. And you're right. Thinking of Michelle, I might picture a shell on me somewhere, and that's a great way to just, if you picture that shell and if you have good visual skills, you can really use that to tie to memory. And, someone who struggles with visual skills, that needs to be trained too. So, or can be.
Okay. Well, I know you have a brain teaser. You're going to try to help those of us today and see if you can, one of the little techniques that you use for retraining the brain.
This is a great one. So we have different exercises, like I said, for whether it's auditory or visual. A lot of what we're going to do today is auditory, even though, we have some camera here, but it's much easier on the radio. So there's some processing speed. There's a processing speed activity that I want you to do. And also you may have to visualize in part of this. And so this may sound simple, and you'd be surprised at how targeted some of this training is and how simple it can be. But you might find that you struggle with it. So we'll see. Yeah. So here's what I want you to do. Everyone, as quickly as you can, I'm going to ask you to name something, and you just name it off, and I'm going to give you about 10 seconds to come up with these, okay? And then I'll ask you to do a little activity.
We're going to have to come back after this break. So if you come back, stay with us. You're listening to Chattanooga Radio Health Essentials.
The Tennessee Valley's news, talk, and sports leader. Nooga Radio, AM 1240 and 92.7 FM.
I've got a $10 bill for you at the best paint store in Chattanooga. David here. Big savings in exterior stains. Chattanooga Paint and Decorating. More than a paint store. Bring up $100 on your next upgrade. Plunk down just $90. Save on all outdoor stains in stock at Chattanooga Paint and Decorating. Prolix Sickens. Benjamin Moore, Flood, Sanson, Richards. 10% off through May 13th. Jim and his team are here to help and advise and to help you hold on to your money. 5529 Hickson Pike. Chattanooga Paint and Decorating. ChattanoogaPaint.com.
Hi, this is Nadia behind the green door. You've had ice cream and you've had shaved ice, but have you had snow cream? It is amazing. It's light, airy, fruity snowflakes melting on your tongue. You need to come and see us. Highway 58, green door next to Hardee's.
The Tennessee Valley's news, talk, and sports leader. Nooga Radio, AM 1240 and 92.7 FM.
3, 2, 1.
Chattanooga Radio, AM 1240 and 92.7 FM's news now.
A 7-year-old boy was gunned down, according to Chattanooga cops, in the second of 2 shootings in Dodson Avenue. At 5:17 a.m. on Sunday, the Chattanooga police say they responded to a shots fired call on Dodson Avenue and discovered a 7-year-old boy suffering from a wound from a high-velocity object. They say it may have been a bullet. He was rushed to the hospital. And on Saturday, a 28-year-old Leslie LeBron Walker Jr. was also rushed to the hospital after being shot himself. The Violent Crimes Bureau is investigating both cases. Saudi Daisy police have put out a warning to citizens after a robbery in Memphis where robbers pretended to be Memphis police, complete with a car with flashing blue lights. Saudi Daisy police say the safe thing to do is to pull over into a 24-hour business and call 911 if you get pulled over, just to make sure your pullover is legit. And a transportation sales tax will be voted on soon in Walker County. Russell Stroud, Nooga Radio News, now.
Scattered showers and thunder showers will move on through for your afternoon. Still pretty wet out there with lots of clouds, highs closer to 80. Tonight, a lingering shower, overnight lows near 72. For Tuesday into the midweek, still unsettled with widely scattered showers and thunder showers, highs lower 80s. Check out Lowe's and get an extra 5% off every day with your Lowe's Advantage card. Subject to credit approval and can't be combined with any other credit offers. Exclusions apply. See Lowe's for details. And I'm Source 12 Chief Meteorologist Patrick Hoare. On Nooga Radio, AM 1240 and 92.7 FM.
The Tennessee Valley's news, talk, and sports leader. Nooga Radio, AM 1240 and 92.7 FM.
Good morning and welcome back to Nooga Radio Health Essentials. I am your host, Loretta Lynn, and you have just tuned in to AM 1240 or FM 92.7. You can also see us streaming live on YouTube and Facebook. Good morning, and I'd like to welcome back my guest this morning, Michelle Hecker-Davis from Learning RX.
Thank you.
And just before the break, we were talking about how the brain, the neuroplasticity in the brain, how the brain works, and at any age, we can still grow the brain. We can still learn and train, and we see that more and more today with the adults out there, our senior population, trying to keep them active. So I think Michelle was going to lead us into a auditory processing technique.
Yes, this is actually we're going to work with processing speed. So I'm going to give you about 10 seconds. And I'll have a little activity for you at the end as well. So I want you as quickly as you can to name me 5 fruits that start with a P.
Start with a P. Okay. Should I help?
You got about 5 seconds left.
Oh, okay. Peaches, pineapples, plums, papaya, and pears.
Yes, good. That's harder than you think
Mm-hmm.
to come up with those right
Yes.
as quickly as you can. That was about 15 seconds, I think. And now I want you to recall the third one you said, and then just spell it backwards for me.
Which one was the third one? We'll say peaches. SEHCAEP.
Great. So what did you have to do to spell that backwards? What was your mind?
Well, I visualized the word and just read the letters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so there's different parts to learning and doing any task that we do. For example, in that instance, and hopefully the listeners were also able to come up with that list of 5 pretty quickly, and then take the third one and spell it backwards, in your own mind. But one thing that you were having to do is really pay attention. So when you were having to name those, spell it backwards, you were having to stay focused on that. Thinking about which one you had said third is a bit of a memory piece. It's a short-term working memory piece. The processing speed, of course, is how quickly you had to do it. So those are the 3 skills that we really use in everything that we do. But then you have your visual skills, your auditory and listening skills, as well as logic and reasoning. You had to come up with a plan. So a lot of times, I'll ask someone to do a task like that, especially, spelling it backwards, and they'll say, I can't do that, and just give up before they even try. Because, usually that indicates that logic and reasoning, which is that, ability to really plan and problem solve, is not, a strength for them. So a lot of times, especially with kids, you'll hear, I don't know. And it's a lot of just struggle with logical planning, processing, problem solving. But that's a fun activity that I like to show, to explain people those skills, some of those. And I have a few other activities. Should I do those now?
Sure.
Okay. So there's this other activity that's auditory, and this is going to work with calculations. This activity is called memory hold. And what I would like you to do, and definitely pay attention to these instructions and listen carefully. So what you're going to do is you're going to take, I'm going to give you 2 numbers, and you're just going to add those 2 numbers together and tell me the sum. Now, then I'll only be giving you 1 number at a time. And the trick here is that you want to add the new number that I give you to the last number that I said. You're not adding it to the answer of the last calculation. Okay. You're adding it to the last number I said. So here's an example. If I say 1, 3,
4,
you'll give me the sum of 4. Now, do you remember the last number that I said?
3.
Okay, now the next number is 2.
5.
Good. 4.
Am I adding it to the 2 or the?
You're adding it to the last number I said.
Okay, the last number you said was 2, I think, right? And then you said 4, so that'd be 6.
That's right. So now the next number is 3.
3. 7.
Good. 5.
8.
2.
I forgot where we're at.
That's okay.
That's hard, yeah, because you're thinking of the sum.
And I'll tell you what, Loretta, you did better than most. That one's a really tough one because your initial reaction is to add to the number you said. Exactly. And when you're you're actually using your working memory and those listening and attention skills to process auditory information. And the calculation is just for fun, the fun part.
So it's memory. You're really stretching because you have to pay attention. You can't really be multitasking like a lot of us are guilty of doing. And they used to say that was a good thing. And now I hear a lot of studies where when you multitask, because you're not focusing 100%, that you really aren't doing any of them justice by doing multiple things at one time.
Yes. And, there are different types of attention skills. There is sustained attention, which is really just the ability to stay focused. So we use this attention when we don't have any distractions around. We're just sitting and doing our work. Some people who struggle with sustained attention, they distract themselves. They start doing something else. So that's just a sustained focus. Then we also have selective attention. Selective attention is actually the skill that we use when we are needing to stay focused and there is a distraction present. So you're working on something and you've got a dog barking, you've got kids coming in, you've got other things kind of distracting you, and just being able to stay focused. Then we have divided attention. And divided attention is the ability to, let's say, load the dishwasher and have a discussion at the same time, or answer an email while you're on a phone call. It really is being able to, and that's that multitasking skill that we all struggle with so much. Of course, when we get into 3 and 4 things, then you don't put all your effort into one thing. But that is a skill that can be built. And the thing about training that's so important and so unique with our Learning RX training methods is that we're able with any individual to find exactly the point where they struggle. So in that memory hold activity, where you were doing pretty well with those single digits, I would probably add on to multiple digits and just make it more difficult. I could change back and forth between addition and then differences and then multiplication and, doing different types of calculations that just made it a little bit more to your level. What was difficult for you? And so that's what's so unique and so important about this training. I'd love to spend some time actually comparing and talking about the differences in this type of training versus digital training, because that's a different world as well.
What's digital training? So
digital training, a lot of people have heard of this app, I think because they just have a really huge marketing budget. Lumosity, lumosity.com. Yeah. And they have an app. Yeah. So Lumosity is a digital training platform that says all the same things as far as cognitive skills training goes. You can train cognitive skills, you can improve memory. All this is based on the same science of neuroplasticity. And it's wonderful and it's amazing. And especially with a program like that or any digital program, brain exercise is going to help you. Now, where in my mind, the digital training falls short is in the fact that you're relying on yourself. And you know what happens when you're doing something that's really hard? You stop doing it. You X out of the app, or, you don't really have that same ability to push yourself. You're also doing a program that's generalized. So it's not targeted to specifically maybe what you need or where you are, the way that this type of personal training is, which is, it's really the same difference in having a personal trainer at the gym versus, buying a gym membership. And how many times does someone have a gym membership and they don't use it, or they don't push themselves, or they don't go sometimes? There's no immediate feedback, there's no accountability, and it just makes it more difficult to get results. Whereas when you have personalized one-to-one training, you can see the results much more easily and quickly.
Right. I can definitely appreciate the part about going to the gym and not pushing yourself, because I'll go and it gets repetitive or it gets boring. Whereas if you have a personal trainer, or you have someone that's going to give you a outline structure and say, okay, I want you to improve 5% every day. Otherwise you're really not going to reach that goal that you want to. You get a plateau. And the same thing as you mentioned with digital training versus one-on-one. When you think about it, I don't know if you mentioned the distractions. Oftentimes you will throw a distraction in while we're trying to do a puzzle, something to help train the brain.
That's right. And that's one of the ways to build attention skills. Now, you can't just put yourself in a distracting environment and that's going to build attention skills. You need to actually be in a training type environment where you can add distractions and specifically challenge yourself to overcome that distraction. One of the things that I have found that's very frustrating, I think of this analogy, and this is talking about kids in school. But when you have a baseball player, so picture a baseball player who struggles with his batting. And when he struggles with his batting, what do? Do you give him a hollowed out bat? Do you, tell the other team's pitcher to kind of back off a little bit? Do you, just tell the ump he needs 4 strikes instead of 3? No, you don't do any of those things. You actually, we see training in the same way. When someone struggles with attention, you don't move them to the front of the class. You don't remove all the distractions. You don't give them, a different testing environment. We want to address what the root issue is, where the attention skill is, by training the same way you would with someone, playing baseball.
That's great. I can appreciate that, because we can't remove all the distractions. We can't always have things done the way we want them to make things easier. We have to accept changes and try to embrace them and find ways to improve where we need to improve. And I know earlier we were talking about how adults learn differently than children. And in one of the studies that I read, talks about the fact that more adults are going back to college, so they have actually structured college programs around adults, in their time, knowing that they're going to be distracted, they may be tired if they're going back to school at night. And some of the, challenges, what they've done is, they've structured it so you can do some classes online, do it from home, or wherever it's convenient for you. But I found personally that going to a class where there is more of a structured setting, working with the professor or with other students in the class, that tends to open up your eyes a little more, because in this study, it says that adults, of course, we're self-directed. We choose to go back to school because we want to improve either personally or professionally, but also we're learning new information. And as adults, we learn that differently. We learn it by experience. We've had life experiences, and there may be other students in class that are going to share their experiences. So that may open up a whole new world for them. Whereas children, when they learn, an adult says you have to go to school, and this is what you have to learn: math, geography, history. I never thought, as a child, what do I need history for? Let me memorize this, take the test, and we're done with it. Whereas an adult, you're self-directed, so there's motivation there.
Yes.
And you're guiding yourself in a way, but you're still expecting information to come from somebody else who has other experiences, or can answer questions that you don't know the question.
It's interesting because that that gap year after high school has been growing in popularity, and I think that it's really important because at that age when you're going straight into college, you're going through the motions. Whereas when you get a little bit more world experience and life experience, then when you do go into college, and there are so many adults in college that are actually just wanting to be there and wanting to learn more so than those kids that are just going through the motions. And so I think that's why you're seeing that rise in popularity with that gap year after high school.
And I think that's a great idea because I went to college for, I think, 1 year. Then I went in the military. And then when I got out, I went back to college again.
Yes.
And even as an adult, if, all the resources lined up, you have the money, you have the time, you're not traveling. I enjoyed going back to school. Some people cringe when they think of the thought, but if you think about your passions and what you're interested in, whether you're doing it for a degree or a certificate or just for pure pleasure, if you want to go back to school to learn how to use computers, how to use your GoPro. There's I think the passion too, in that study I was reading, takes a big portion of your attitude and being able to perform well. In regular school, elementary school, middle school, I didn't do so well as a student. But when I got to college, I made the dean's list, and I didn't even know what that was. Someone told me. I was like, oh, okay, well, I'm just doing what I enjoy. And I think if we're fortunate enough to find ourselves in a situation where you can do what you love to do, then, that just makes everything so much better.
Yes. Yeah, that's wonderful. That's great that you got the opportunity to do that. I wish I would have. I wish I had not gone straight into high school, but taken that time to get some more life experience. Yeah,
and I'm seeing, like I said, more students, more taking a year off, traveling around Europe or some other country, and then they go back. And I think that's good. It's like when I went to the military, I always felt that every child should go through some form of boot camp because it teaches them attention to detail. It teaches them respect and so many other things that you need to learn as an adult that you may not have learned in school, especially with so many single parent households.
Yeah, that's another great example of training in life. We really, so much of life is just training. When you're training your kids or you're training yourself in the military, or so much of what you do is just creating habits. And when we focus on creating those habits around the brain, that's when you can really build a better brain.
Yes, and I love to learn, but I think sometimes too we have to find that balance that works for us, and being able to move forward. But learning, like I do here, meeting people just in everyday life at different functions, and finding out more about what we didn't know or misconceptions, things that we were taught younger in life. That there's so much new out there. It's exciting and it's fun to learn and to try to also share that. And I have fortunate to have this platform to share with people that there are different methods of coaching and learning and tutoring. And I love what Learning RX does to help not only adults, as we mentioned with Eddie, and I had the pleasure of speaking with him a while back, and just really excited. He loves your program, and I think they're also looking at incorporating that into the business place. And I think more businesses, with all the talk over the years where they've had team building and where all the teams or managers or employees will go out and do an exercise so they can bond better or work better as a team and have communication skills. I think the Learning RX has opened up, given him so much more personally and professionally.
Yeah, well, I mean, imagine a business that focuses on building its employees' brain health and efficiency. How much more you could accomplish and how much more each employee could do. I've been in the corporate world once in my life, and to me, it was there. I feel like I could have done twice as much as what I was required to do. It was just, it's not a very productive environment. And, imagining it now, and that was part of that, just going through and clocking in, clocking out, getting the paycheck, that kind of life. But when you can have, be excited about something, be passionate about it, and be efficient with it, you can accomplish so much more.
And I've seen that. I read about it in the paper when you hear about somebody who's been fortunate to have a career in something they enjoy or not. Even if you're in a position that you don't want that job, that wasn't what you really wanted, but when you do find ways to enjoy it anyway, you find even, not to pick on anyone, but when I go through, occasionally I'll go through the drive-through at McDonald's. That lady probably doesn't want to be there. She may want to be retired or be at home with her grandkids, but she's like, welcome to my McDonald's. How can I help you? She's always happy. She's always very, friendly and outgoing. And she just, early in the morning when you've got a lot on your mind and you just want to get something and go through, it's nice to see that there's people out there who are going to make an effort to enjoy where they're at, and that'll help build on other areas to take them to the next level.
And that's that growth mindset. It really is. It's interesting to see kids nowadays versus kids even 30 years ago. So many kids now are in that fixed mindset. They cannot handle making mistakes. They cannot handle, failure. And, that effort and that attitude is so important. I'm curious if any listeners right now, experience that with their child, that they're just seem totally unmotivated. And you tend to not even look at intelligence, and you probably think they're so smart. They can do all these things. So why are they refusing to do their homework? And it's probably has to do with part of that mindset or very specific cognitive skills.
Yes, I agree. I've seen that with friends of ours, their kids. I've seen how, and they post it all on Facebook, so what they're thinking, everything. And it's frustrating because you just want to say, hey, let it go. Just let's move beyond that and let's focus on something positive, which is hard to do, I know, especially for people that may be depressed or have other challenges in their life. And we all do at different times, different stages. But it's always refreshing to know that you're going to get through this. And once you do, you can look back and say, wow, I didn't think I was capable of this. But I don't believe, I believe that we're brought to a situation where we have the resources or the know-how to take us forward into, past that, beyond it, and move to something better.
Yes.
So adult learning, I came across this and I wanted to share it. It's adult learners' traits. And these are just, what, as an adult, some of the traits that you would have, as we talked about the growth mindset, self-direction as an adult. We also have practical and results-oriented, because these may be things that we're doing to improve personally or professionally. So we expect that what we're learning to be applied right away. We use personal experiences. We have motivation as an adult, because we also have to multi-level responsibilities, juggling family, friends, work, and even personal time. A lot of us get so bogged down with work and family that we forget to take care of ourselves. And that's part of the reason that Health Essentials is here, is to help remind people that it is important. And, you can't put it off, because recently we lost someone in the family because she got sick and she thought she was better. And because she didn't go to the doctor in time to get some medicine, she passed away.
Wow.
Now, a young lady, and it's really heartbreaking that people don't want to take care of their health, or they figure, oh, I have time for that later on. So after our break, we're going to come back and talk to Michelle a little bit more about getting your child ready for school and certain techniques or advice that she has to walk you through when your child is struggling, if it's just a tutoring in math, or do they have a cognitive weakness that can be addressed. So just wanted to remind our listeners, you're listening to Nooga Radio, AM 1240 or 92.7 FM. And if you have a question, you can call us at 800-8949. And this is brought to you by Loretta Lynn's Essential Oils. If you are having trouble sleeping or falling asleep or staying asleep, to try essential oils. They're all natural and safe. 423-605-4719.
The Tennessee Valley's news, talk, and sports leader. Nooga Radio, AM 1240 and 92.7 FM.
And now to our reporter in the field.
We asked Ray at Ray's Plumbing what's important for homeowners to know.
Some field line systems can cost upwards of $10,000. The bottom line is to save yourself money down the road. I would definitely recommend everybody with a septic that is not on county or city sewer to have an inspection done by a qualified professional. It'd be great if nobody did inspections on them for all plumbing companies. That's what we do to make a living. Not to scare anyone, but it should be in the back of your mind. The danger is the field line failing and costing thousands upon thousands of dollars and tearing your